Frodo, you're in my garden again. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to throw? You want me to throw your ball? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Simply Wendy. One of the things I do over the summer is I grow basil. I love to grow basil. For me, it's very easy to grow, and today is basil harvest day. Right now it's about 66 degrees, and the rest of the week it's going to start heating up. We've had cool weather, but it's going to get up into the low 90s, and I just think it's time, October 10th, to harvest my basil. So this is going to take a few days. I'm going to make basil three ways. I'm going to dry it, I'm going to make pesto, and I'm also going to just use the rest to chop up and freeze for future use. These are the stalks from my smallest basil plant, and this is a lot of basil. And what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to dry it. And I do a very, very simple method. And basically what I do is I just line a cookie sheet with paper towels, and I'm going to pull off the leaves from the basil plant and let them dry naturally on the cookie sheet. Some people have gone out and bought really expensive dehydrators, or they may use an oven, and that achieves the effect that you want. It dehydrates, it takes out the moisture, but the other thing it does is it takes out the essential oil of the basil leaves and leaving you with something tasteless. We all want that delicious basil taste that we all love. So this process of drying the leaves on a cookie sheet will take, could take up to a week, maybe a little longer. So I'm going to go over each stalk very carefully and pick only the best leaves. Leaves that have begun to yellow or get brown, I'm just going to discard. Or if they have bug bites in them, I want really, really nice leaves. And you're going to place them the top of the leaf down, because when they dry, they have a tendency to curl inward. So I'm just going to take the leaves and I'm just going to place them on the cookie sheet like that. And I might have to use two based on how big this is. But I'm going to be very careful only to pick the best leaves, and it will be a process. I was amazed at how many of the basil leaves were browning and had little bug bites out of them. So this is all I got from that big bunch. And I also want to tell you that you can go to the grocery store and buy fresh basil that they have and do the same process. Doesn't have to come just from the garden. And there's just something about when you dry your own basil, how it has just a much better flavor than when you get it in the store. It has been exactly a week to the day that I picked those stalks of basil for drying, and as I'm going to show you the leaves. These are what the leaves look like. They're very dry, very crispy, I guess you could say, and I am going to show you a picture of the transformation right here. Now all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to take the basil leaves that I've dried, and I'm just going to put them in a Ziploc bag. And I'm just going to crunch them up once they're in the bag. I'm not going to use a food processor for this, because if I did, these are just so crunchy that it would turn everything into a powder, and I don't want that. It's not what I want. It's not what you want either. This is kind of fun. So now they're in the Ziploc bag, and I'm going to seal it and just crunch it up. Now I've gotten the basil to a nice consistency that could be great for cooking, and I'm going to add it into this airtight container that I have. So I'm just going to pour it in. And that basil gave me about 2 tablespoons. So I am going to be drying a lot more from the basil that I picked yesterday. going to start picking my basil leaves for making pesto and for freezing. I'm only going to be picking the best leaves. As you can see, this leaf is kind of yellowing. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to discard it. I'm going to put it in my compost. This is a nice leaf right here. Nice and green, no bug bites, no yellowing. These are the kind of leaves I'm going to pick for my pesto. Once I've picked all the leaves I'm going to be using for my pesto, I'm going to wash them. I'm not going to wash them first. I'm going to do it after. That way I'm not washing leaves I'm not going to be using. I have a colander filled with fresh basil leaves to make my pesto and then just to freeze the basil leaves to use as needed. Now, once I get these last little bits in, there we go, I'm going to wash and then process. So let's make some pesto. For our purposes today, I'm going to make just a standard recipe that a normal household would make, and that would call for 2 cups of basil. This is some of the basil that I just washed. We're just going to put everything into a food processor. And when I say packed basil, I mean packed basil. 2 cups. So we're going to put that in along with our Parmesan cheese, which is a half cup. This recipe calls for 2 cloves of garlic, but seriously, whenever I get a recipe that gives me a garlic amount to use, I always double it. That's just my own personal preference. Feel free to use 2. I'm using 4. 4 cloves of garlic and a 1/4 cup of good olive oil. We're going to put our lid on our food processor and we're going to pulse it. Oh, look at that. Look at this. Now, for me, I added a 1/4 cup of olive oil to this. It's a little too thick for my tasting, so I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to this. Again, this is all in what you like. And I'm going to pulse it one more time. So simple. Okay. Now, you may be wondering, where are the pine nuts? I'm not using pine nuts. I don't use pine nuts in my pesto. It's just a personal preference. I don't feel that they add any additional benefit or flavor. And they're very costly, and it's a lot of added fat calories that you may not want. So that's my reasoning for not adding pine nuts. But feel free. If you want to use pine nuts, please do. I think it's about 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of pine nuts that you would want to use. Let's see how we're looking here. Okay, now we're talking. Again, I'm going to add a little bit more. I probably should have added just a whole 1/2 cup of olive oil to this. A little bit more. Process this. There, now we're looking good. Scrape the sides down. I'll show you this in just a second. Here's our beautiful pesto. Just look at that. Look at that beautiful green color. This is a lot. And what I normally do is I take what I might be using for dinner, let's say tonight, keep that out, and then I take the rest and I freeze it in ice cube trays. That way I have just enough for when I want to use it. Each of these cubes in this particular ice cube tray is about 1/3 cup, and that's what I'm going to be putting in here. Again, if yours are 1/4 cup, fine, but just know what your measurement is. So here we go. Just going to add this to our ice cube trays. So this is how much I got out of that 2 cups of packed basil. So I have about a cup This is about a cup of pesto, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and then just a little bit left here. I am going to be making more pesto with the rest that I have, but now I'm going to show you what I do as far as just chopping the basil to freeze it with olive oil. So now what I do with some of the other basil is I just take it and I just chop it. I don't put it in a food processor. I'm just going to chop it like this. I usually will use this in soups or anything that calls for, if something calls for basil, a recipe like a tablespoon of basil or something like that. This is always my go-to. So all I do is I just cut it up, just a rough cut, like this. Again, the size is however you want to do it, but I just roughly cut it up. And I would, with another one of my ice cube trays, I would just fill however much I wanted in my ice cube tray of the fresh chopped up basil, put a little olive oil in there, stir it, and we're good. Thanks for coming along on my basil processing, harvesting journey. I have a good amount of basil pesto here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 ice cube trays full, or not tray, but 7 ice cubes full that I can use whenever I want. Feel free to double, triple, quadruple this recipe however you see fit. I will add a link to the recipe in the description below. Have a great day and see you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment in the comments section below and share this video with your friends. I've added a link to the recipe in the description below. See you next time on Simply Wendy Live, Love, Bake.